I'm very excited to share my story because there's nothing really, really special. I'm not special or anything like that, but I'm not. I'm just an ordinary person, despite what I want to think. I was actually in uni and I had my whole life planned out for me. So being born in a typical Asian family, I had high hopes to do something medical. So I got there, studied really hard, didn't play, didn't go out, was a good little girl. And when I got to uni, I remember feeling very, very empty and unsatisfied. And I remember specifically, I would actually wake up really early and I would bus it, train it, tram it, walk it. And it took about 2 hours to get to uni. And once I got to the front doors, I actually stood there for about 5 minutes and I physically couldn't actually walk in the doors. So that was really odd to me because I had worked my whole life to get there. And after doing this for about 6 months, I actually finally turned around and I would do the same thing back home, another 2 hours, and I'll probably hide until about 6 p.m. and then go home and pretend I had a fantastic day at uni. And I did this for 8 months until I finally couldn't do it anymore. And so that's how, I guess, maybe some of you might feel when you start sort of exploring for other ideas. But at that point in my life when my world went upside down, it actually gave birth to, I guess, something else. And that was really the beginning of my business journey, because it was that sort of that breakdown that led me to actually explore new things. And business was never part of my I never even thought of business. I was always science and maths. So I actually started looking around, and then I found a short business course at Box Hill Institute, and that was a TAFE, so that was a no-no, because I was a uni girl. And so after some thought, I actually completed a short business course called NEIS. Has anyone heard of NEIS at all? NEIS? I think that's a great program. So I did that, and they gave a lot of practical skills to me, which was very different from anything I'd ever learned, because it was, I think, 6 weeks or something like that. And at the end of it, what would happen was if you did a viable business plan, they would actually give you a $12,000 government grant. And this was actually paid out to you over, I think it was 1 year. So I did that and I came out, really excited with my business plan. And my first viable business plan, which I'd ever written, was actually a scrapbook photo frame. And in hindsight, it would have never worked. But I remember I was really excited. I got the grant. I started making this product and I took it to market. And the idea was that people would be able to slot their photos in this beautifully decorated artwork. And so I went to all the kindergartens. I cold called. I cold visited. I did 8 months of just shoving my product in people's faces, and it failed hopelessly. And I remember at this point, I was really hopeless and really, really, I had a lot of self-doubt. And I'm not sure, is anyone at that point in the business journey at all? One person? It's a good thing. There's a good thing coming up. So fast forward, I guess, a couple of months, I had a business partner who saw what I was going through. And during this really dark time in my life, I actually started folding origami. So I started folding and doing what I did as a kid that made me happy. And I hadn't folded any origami for, I think, about 15 years at this point. So my friend saw it and he said, wow, that is really, really beautiful. So he said, you should frame that. And I had truckloads of stock of the other frames left. So I actually put it in the frame and he said, that is a kick-ass product. So we took it to market and we went to the craft markets, and within the first, I think, 3 hours we sold out. Wow. So that was our first product. successful product. And since then, that's actually how Short Story was born. So that's really Short Story, which is a meaningful gift company, actually started off with failure, a lot of failures. And what that taught me was that failure is actually a prerequisite to success. And it's through a lot of failures that it actually made me into a stronger person and gave me the mindset to persevere through and to keep changing and keep refining until I found something that gave me the success of what I have today. So that's a little bit about my story and how Short Story, I think Short Story now, we're 7 years in the running. So the first 2 years was extremely up and down. A lot of slow and humble beginnings and slow growth. So I remember what happened was once I had the craft markers and we had tested this product, we were riding a wave, and so we thought, let's open our first pop-up shop. Does anyone know where One Turner South is at all? Yeah? Knox City. It's a beautiful, I thought it was the best shopping centre in the world, but it turns out that it's actually not very good. So at this time, it was 8 months down the track, and we saved $5,000 from selling this product. And 7 years ago, that was a lot of money to me. So we had the opportunity to open a pop-up shop during Christmas. And all our friends told us, you're crazy. You know, you left dental for this. Are you out of your mind? Like, you're folding paper. You're never going to make money. I can make this, which is the number one thing that everyone said. And there was this opportunity to open a pop-up shop at Knox City. And the rent was $4,500 a week, which was all the money we had. And there was, I think it was 2 weeks out from December the 1st. And I said to my business partner, he's like, oh, do you want to do it? I'm like, no way. If we can survive 1 week. If we don't sell, we're gone, we're bankrupt, that's it. And he said, but something in us actually just really wanted to go for it. But all our friends, all our family, everyone that we knew they literally told us, you're going to fail. And I think it was that coupled with my youth and my stubbornness, I wanted to prove them wrong. So we did it anyway. And I think on the first day we did, I think it was about $2,000, and we were blown away. So by the end of the 4 weeks, we did $80,000. And that was a one-man band. This is 7 years ago. And it was incredible. And that really gave us the confidence to actually not listen to all the noise around us and just do what you instinctively in your gut believe to be right. And I think if we didn't do that that pop-up shop, we wouldn't have done anything else, because since then we have been met with so many crossroads, and every single time we've come to a crossroad and we've done what our gut told us to do, irrelevant of whether it worked out or didn't work out, we took something from it that was a lot more than what we paid. So that time and time and time again, it's really what propelled Short Story to be what it is today. And I think now we're stocked over to 1,000 stores throughout Australia, New Zealand, and just opened Hong Kong. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, but that's my short story. Mm.
Okay, so thank you for that. A round of applause, please, for Carolyn, first off. Wonderful story, so thank you. Something that comes to my mind is kind of what came first. Was it the idea and the creativity within yourself, or was it kind of more so the idea of working for yourself that appealed to you more, or was it a combination? Obviously, that turning back from university and thinking you didn't want to go down that path. Was it that inner child that was speaking to yourself that said, I need to be creative, or I want to work for myself?
I never thought about business ever. I wasn't, it wasn't even part of my psychology at all. I just found, it surprised me how dissatisfied I was when I got to the destination that I thought I had always planned for. So I was totally lost for 2 years. And going into business actually happened by chance, actually, because my father had run a restaurant for 30 years, but it was a failing business. And right about the time that I quit uni, I actually thought I'd just help him have a look at some numbers because I was good with numbers. And right when I looked at the numbers, within 1 week, the restaurant burnt down after 30 years. And I got a taste of it. And it only took me 1 week to get a taste of business, and it sparked a curiosity in me because it was the first time that I felt like I was fully in control of something, and that whatever I put in, I would reap all the benefits. So that's what sparked my business journey. As far as discovering sort of short story and creating meaningful gifts, that happened by revisiting what I loved to do as a child. And that too was also on the back of failed business. It wasn't something that I gravitated towards naturally, because when I first launched my first product, it was very logical, it was researched, it was, I thought there was an opportunity there. But it wasn't until I started doing what I was passionate about that it actually took flight.
You mentioned that there were expectations about what you would do, dentistry, for example. Can you walk us through the process of talking to your family and friends that you're changing your mind?
I remember not telling them for 8 months. But when I told my father, who was the biggest barrier of all, he was actually silent from disappointment. So it was very difficult, but I guess it was a really, really dark time for me, I think. That's when I had my business partner, who I think collectively we were stronger. And that gave me the support that I needed to just do, for once, what I believed in. Because in my whole life, it was very expectations all the way. So for the first time, it was actually doing something that was very selfish, what I thought was very selfish, and which is why also I made sure that it had to work. Because if I'm going to give up something that I've worked so hard for, my degree, then whatever else I pursue, it better work. Yeah.
You mentioned that it was a dark time. What was the darkest? What made it such a dark time?
I think the feeling of being lost, definitely. I think your own psychology plays a lot of tricks on you. For me, it was self-doubt. If I dropped out of uni, then I'm a failure. And if I can't finish something or take something to the end, then what gives me the confidence to actually take my business to great heights? So there was a lot of psychological back and forth, a lot of self-doubt, especially when I'd never ventured out this much on my own. And it became really dark through all the lies and through a lot of family and friends telling me that you're bound to fail, but they did it with love. They did it because they didn't want me to give my life up. But that wasn't very supportive. Yeah, but it was out of love, definitely out of love. Yeah.
And you talk a little bit about the business partner. Was that person responsible for pulling you out of that dark time? Was it kind of the confidence that they had, or kind of the ideas or the direction they were providing? What kind of that relationship?
My business partner, William, the great thing about having a business partner for me is he possessed a lot of skills that I didn't have. So I was very logical, and I had a lot of self-doubt, and I sort of measured sort of pros and cons to everything, whereas he was really happy-go-lucky. So having my business partner, who was the complete polar opposite of me and who possessed different skill sets like a previous speaker, that really played to our strengths. And together we were able to cover so much more ground. I definitely think without William, I wouldn't have been able to hold out for this long.
I'll do the pop-up shop maybe.
No, he was like, yeah, let's do it, So, you know, who cares if we lose it all? We'll just start again. All good. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, one thing that really stuck out to me was you said that your friends and your family doubted you, but they doubted you with love.
Love. Yeah.
And I assume that at the time, that's not a realization that you would have known.
No, I would say I did know it. I did know it was out of love. But I think when you get an idea and when you have a passion for something, and that's why it's so important to find something that you're willing to work for free. Because no matter what anyone says, you almost have this bullish drive to just do it. So for me, that pushed me through, despite what everyone else said. Because who would think that folding origami or paper products you could sell and turn it into a business? That sounds ludicrous, you know. So I think for me anyway, it was a belief, a passion. And even if it didn't work, it wouldn't matter because I was doing what I loved and I would have done it for free anyway.
Did you have a fear of disappointing your parents and your father?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, I had a fear of disappointing everyone. I worried about my image. I worried, like, if I said the wrong thing. I worried if I was out of line. Like, I lived a very boxed lifestyle. And business actually helped me find myself, because in business, you can't worry about what anyone else is doing. So throughout my first few years of short story, I was constantly looking at what other people were doing. I was comparing myself to them. I was thinking, oh, so-and-so's, you know, so much further in their business journey. What is he doing? What is her doing? And I went crazy, like just went mad because of all the comparisons of everything. But I think in business, it grew my character so much that now I'm able to stand, I stand more firm than before when I had all the credentials. Those were hollow to me, did nothing.
Would you, Caroline, would you say that that's also maybe, would you say you were more shy in the early stages? Would you, I don't know, were you more kind of forthright in your views and your opinions and also maybe your decisions? Or has that over time grown and developed, would you say?
I think definitely I seemed confident to a lot of people, but I was very shy. I was actually very shy, and it was a facade. Having your own business allowed me to be who I really am and sort of let go of controlling everything or trying to be a perfectionist with everything and sort of make sure that I got a certain result. Because what I've learnt in business is you can do everything, you can only do what you can do, and you got to let go of the result. Because if you've done everything, then there is nothing else you can change. And that was one of my biggest lessons in business and also as a person individually as well.
Obviously, you're from a scientific and mathematical background. How do you make those decisions as well? So do you kind of, I don't know, do you have any tools or techniques that maybe other people could use in this audience to...
In business, was it?
To shape your decisions.
So in the early stages, everything was by gut feel. But now, luckily, after 7 years, we've accumulated enough data to be able to actually look at our data, and the decisions that we make now is more about what the data looks like. So if, for example, a certain product range like jewellery sells really, really well, then I would know to spend a certain amount on purchasing jewellery or reinvesting in jewellery. But I guess in the first 2 years of business, it's really difficult to get that kind of data. So it relies heavily on your gut feel. And for us, that worked for us. I wouldn't necessarily advise it. I think if you could get data as early as possible, I'd collate everything right away. So we were very lucky that we were able to make it past the first few years with very little tools. And that's when persistence pays off. But now definitely I would leverage as much help as I can get through software and technology. No, go for
Please.
it. Sorry, what was that? So
Is the data driving your decisions and what way you're taking your business?
Yeah.
As a result of what you might want to do creatively-wise versus what the customers want?
I think that's a great question because that's something that we struggle with all the time. So I will always look at the data as a support. But if I've got a really strong gut feeling about something, or I believe strongly in a product range, I will ignore the data.
Do you have an example of when that happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just came back from a sourcing trip, and for example, the data did not support it did not support jewelry. So it did not support rings, and it did not support necklaces. But what I found was if I repackaged it or if I turned it a certain way, I really believe that our customers and our demographic would appeal to that. So then I still sourced it in anyway. So I think data can support, data is sort of logical only, but I think what brings a business to the next level is when you put your heart and soul into it, and that no data can actually reflect. Yeah.
Sure. While you pass the microphone up, I'll ask a quick question. You talk a lot about making decisions based on your gut at the start and then bringing in data later to support that. What was the first moment where your gut said to you, you know what, despite the ups and downs of business, we're going to be okay?
I would say third year into our business. So the first 2 years was, because it's quite slow, there wasn't much risk or anything, but we actually got to our third year and we started to, because the business was growing, we started to have a lot more expenses. So it actually came to the point where cash flow was a really big problem, and we were on the brink of bankruptcy. So it was the week of, I remember this week in our third year where I sat with my business partner and we said, I'm so sick of this, because despite all our efforts, the cash flow was very difficult and we weren't able to, it would be 1 week before we wouldn't be able to pay our staff. And I remember saying to Will, I'm feeling so hopeless, I want to give this up. Like, if this doesn't work, we're going to give it up. And I think the books and everything was telling us that it's very difficult. It's a very difficult part of the industry to be successful in. At that point, homewares and giftware was one of the least growing industries, and you put in handmade into it, you put in Australian made into it, the margins weren't good enough, it was a failing industry, it was hopeless. All the data said, get out as quick as you can. And also technology was coming in at that point and it was going to take over all this novelty handmade stuff. And Will and I we wanted to give it that one last push. We really wanted to give it one good chance, and we said, let's give it all that we can. So even if it fails, at least we've done everything and we've got nothing to look back on. So it was the third year. We put in whatever reserves we had. At that time, I think we did one last trade fair to market our products. It cost us, I think, $20,000, and we redid the whole stand, we rebranded it, we sort of put in more effort into presenting in a better way. We changed the business 180, and if that didn't work, that would be it. So luckily, it worked really well. And we had a 300% growth. So that saved the whole business, and again, that was a case where our gut told us to do something. But even though the numbers didn't support it, just like opening a pop-up shop in Knox City, $4,500 in 1 week, and we had to sell X number of units, it looked so bleak. But you get that inkling that you want to just give it that one last shot. You know, I don't recommend this to anyone. Hopefully you're not in this position. But that's just one of the cases where I think passion and perseverance paid off.
All right, little question. Just a couple times we've talked about the fact that our business partner has separate skills than we do. I was wondering what you might think that the personality traits or the way that you work, the similarities between you and your business partner, like what those key factors were between you and the person you worked with that meant that you survived together.
I think I'm actually life partners with my business partner, so it makes it even more tricky. Will is very happy-go-lucky. Don't think about anything, just do it. And I'm very planned. So my skill sets, what I look after in the business, I think if you've got a business partner, it's important to actually give each other the space that they need. So Will would look after sales, whereas I'd look after marketing and product, the creative side. So I think it's important to give each other your domain. But I actually welcome different personalities because it brings a different vibe to the business. But the most important thing I would say is as long as you guys are looking in the same direction, I think you can respect each other's differences. For me, Will and I were able to get to this area purely because we had the same end result and we saw the same goal or vision for our business. So everything else doesn't matter. Is that where you're at your business journey, looking at a partner or?
Not quite. It's just, it was more of a curiosity.
Yeah.
A specific example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Following on from that question, we hear a lot about the dangers of being in business with your life partner. Was there ever a time in your business where the strain and the stress was so much that it put in danger your partnership?
Yeah. I've been with my partner for 15 years now. So we were able to build a lot of values beforehand. There were definitely times that working with your partner, there's a lot of sacrifices because every time we get together, it's business. And we run the risk of only talking about business and not investing in sort of private time outside. So even now we're working through that all the time, even after 15 years. I would say that the business actually, in some ways for us, it actually saved our relationship because when we're just in a relationship together, without the business, we focus on each other and there isn't a common alignment or goal. But having the business there, we're both looking in the same direction. So it actually gave us a different element rather than nitpicking at each other or rather than judging each other, we're both just judging the business. So for us, it actually worked really well. But it's a very fine line and there's definitely a sacrifice of time with each other. But for us, it's a sacrifice that we're happy to make because we're pursuing our dreams.
And is there a time where you look back and you say, wow, I made the biggest mistake of my life?
You mean with my partner?
Is Will watching this right now? No, the question was, what have I done?
Yeah.
You just sit there and you think, what have I done?
We created a product called Happy Pills. And what it is, it's a capsule with a happy quote inside, but it's packaged to look like drugs, if you may. So it's quite an innovative, fun product, and it's meant to be for adults as a quirky way of getting your daily dose of happiness, but in the form of happy quotes or motivational quotes inside. So when we launched that, we had massive success and it was sold all over nationwide. And then one day we actually had a little, we realised that we were all over, I think it was Channel 9, Channel 7, ABC, every network you can think of was saying that Short Story is selling drugs to children. Which was the greatest publicity you could buy. You can't even buy that publicity. But because we were only, I think, 2-3 years into our business journey, that scared the crap out of me. And we were covered by every news outlet you could think of. We were on the front page of newspapers, and must have been a slow news day, I think. And it was very, very frightening because everyone was coming to get our, trying to interview us, and then we'd interview and we thought that Channel 9 News was trying to get our side of the story, you know, trying to give us a good angle or good answer to them, and then they'd come and interview us and they'd take a 5-second snippet of Will saying, I think this could be beneficial for children, and then they'll caption it with something else, and then it made him look like a drug lord. It was horrible, and at that point I was actually scared crapless, because ACCC actually got involved, and so ACCC called us and said, you might need to recall all your products, and if we recalled all the thousands of units we sold, that would have actually really burdened us financially. And being so young, I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't know if there was legal stuff involved. And when ACCC called, they had all these legal stuff happening, and they called me, and the guy who handled my case, he's like, what research have you done? You know, what health standards do you have? What market research, this market research, that? Do you have this documentation, that documentation? And this was the guy who was supposed to be helping me. And I didn't know what to say. And he just said to me, I remember he said to me, what the hell were you thinking? He said, he goes, you're going down. This is my case manager who was supposed to be helping me. And at that point, I broke down in tears. And I said, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to say. I just broke down in tears. And then luckily, the people who were ripping our product off, they got scared too, because if that happened to us, that's going to happen to them. So they called me and said, what are you going to do about it? Do you have a lawyer? Like, let's get in together on this, you know? And so luckily it worked out, and then we got legal advice and we came out fine. We had the right documentation, we had done market research, and we were able to prove our case, and we're fine. But that was horrific. It was a horrific experience. But fast forward 7 years down the track now, if that had happened to me now, I would have leveraged the crap out of it and marketed that. But back then, I was so scared. I was this innocent little girl, and I thought I was going to jail. But, you know, so that was a point where I was thinking, what the hell am I doing? What have I done? But it's full of lessons like this anyway, and it's a good memory, I think.
That sounds nice. Does anyone here have any questions for Carolyn?
Yes. When did you start paying yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. At the beginning, the first year, I actually worked 2 jobs to support taking my product to the craft markets and testing it. I started paying myself a massive $200 a week.
That's a lot.
Massive. In the second year. And then I think it was actually, and whilst I was growing it, I wanted to grow it. And even after taking it to pop-up shops and everything, every dime that we made, I reinvested it back into the business. So I think it went from $200 a week in the second year, and third year, I think I increased it till $600, and then it went on every year from there. Yeah, so it wasn't until the 4th year that I fully took a salary. Yeah, only when the business was able to, and it was solid. Yeah.
Any other questions?
You talk a lot about self-doubt, or rather family doubt and friends doubt, talking about your idea and generating it. I mean, what would your advice be to startups who are probably going through very similar things?
I definitely think surrounding yourself with fellow business people is one of the best starts you could have. I didn't do that, and for that I paid with a lot of psychological trauma, really. Every, I think, business person goes through extreme highs and extreme lows, and if you don't have a strong support network, it's really hard on yourself. Like, you can make it on yourself, but certainly if there's an easier way, go for it. If I had to do anything again, it would be to enlist mentors right at the beginning and to surround myself with fellow business people, because a lot of the times, even just talking to someone and someone saying, oh, you know, I feel the same way, that is enough to support you and carry you through. But unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of that at the beginning.
One thing that sticks out to me is that your story sounds like one of transformation for yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
And you also mentioned that your journey, there are incredibly high highs and incredibly low lows. Can you share what is the highest high and what is the lowest low?
The highest high, one of many, is during our second year. This happens to us a lot. we had an opportunity come up. So it was an art show, and it was an annual art show in Melbourne called Art Melbourne, and there was one spot left in the new area. And again, it was $5,000 for a space, a 3x3 space, and it was 1 week out. So same thing happened. Will and myself wanted to do it. Again, everyone told us we're crazy, do it next year. You've got 1 week, you can't prepare. And we didn't listen, naturally. So we just paid for it. And we had 1 week to produce. This is mass scale artworks. So this is international buyers where people were selling artworks for, I don't know, 60,000, 100,000, 200,000. Will and I were like, oh, let's give it a shot. Why not? So we took it up, and what we had to make was $25,000 sales. That was our target. And when we told people, people said we were crazy. So this was in our second year. We did it anyway. And I remember in the opening night when we went there, as we were walking in, we saw all the top players you could think of everywhere. And we had a shitty little 3x3 stand. And people had houses erected, and they had like couches and flowers and massive canvases painted all over the walls. And with every step, I felt tinier and tinier and tinier. And when we got to the end, we did our thing, and opening night came. And I remember at one point, our stand was so packed that Will and I actually got forced out of our stand. And we stood at the outside our stand, a little 3x3 with, I think it was 10 pieces of artwork in there. And Will and I said nothing to each other. We just looked at each other and we smiled. And we said nothing, but we understood the immense happiness that we had. And that was one of the best memories I've ever had, because it showed that just listen to your heart and it will pay off. So it's just been happening to me ever since that. Every single time we do something that everyone advises against because we really believe in it, it has always paid off. And we were lucky enough to have Mrs. Gandel come in. So she was the owner of Chadston. And she came in with sunglasses, indoors, a tiny little lady, and she had bodyguards all around her. And then when I went to serve her and I said, her bodyguards go, ugh, like this to me, and they said, do you know who she is? And I'm like, no. And then she said I remember the bodyguard said to me, you're very lucky. And that's what he said. And I was like, okay. So that was, and then she ended up buying some artworks from us and commissioning some private pieces. So that was incredible, an incredible experience to have, and really encouraging to our confidence. And that's one of my best highlights.
I remember that stand.
Did you cut? How did you remember that stand?
I remember that stand.
Oh my God. That was amazing. Other highlights, 7 years down the track, this happened just half a year ago. Just before Christmas was 7 years down the track in our business journey. Will and I have grown a little bit more confidence. So we actually tracked the Maya CEO down. And we wanted to get into Maya. So we came to a talk much like this, and Richard Umbers, the CEO, was chatting. And Will and I went to his chat, and at the end of it, we gave him a little show bag, and we just went up to Richard Umbers and we just said a hi. And we just said, we're not selling you anything, we just want to give you a little gift. And we left it at that, and we went away. And so I think a couple of days after that, we received a thank you email from the event organisers, and then at the very end of the email it said, will the owners of Short Story contact us? And we're like, what the hell? Is this a typo? I could have, because it was a mass email to everyone. It was
typo.
really weird. And so we contacted them, and then they told us that Richard Umbers was looking for us. I'm pretty sure he could have found us if he just Googled Short Story. But he made a massive scene of it. And from that, within 1 month, we got into Giftorium at Maya. So that was incredible, because when we got that, everyone at Maya contacted us and they said, what did you do? Because they said, this is impossible. No one has ever gotten into Maya Christmas Giftorium in 1 month's notice. This has never happened before. They go, what strings did you pull? And we're like, nothing. But Will and I didn't say that, of course. We're like, yeah, we know Richard Umbers. It's all good. It's fine. When we went to the meeting, no one works at Maya here, right? But when we got to the meeting, everyone was so nice to us, and they're like, just tell Richard we did a good job. And we're like, yeah, I'll tell him next time I see him. All good. So I think putting yourself out there and just dreaming big and doing whatever it takes, you never know what comes back at you.
Excellent. We've got time for a couple more, Kim?
Maybe one more question, if anyone else here has a question.
I've got one more. So this evening's been based around the first 5 years of business, and a lot of people talk about maybe seeing the exit plan and maybe seeing the kind of the next 5 years. And do you have a plan for the next 5 years? Do you have a plan? Did you ever start off the business thinking, I will sell the business one day? What's kind of the next 5 years that are in store?
I started off thinking I wouldn't sell the business. It was a passion project and I never knew where it could go. So the first 2 years, I'd say no. I didn't have a exit strategy, but within the third, fourth year, once you're sort of systemizing a few things, you get to explore a little bit more. And we started exploring the idea of exiting. It's not my intention to, but I think it's good to set up some system so that at least that's an option. And it just helps me be able to scale the business in the future. So for now, the next 5 years, I don't have a solid plan because I've learned to sort of let go of the illusion of control. So we have sort of goals, but not a set out structured plan. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Potentially selling the business or potentially exiting the business, so I'll try and speak up.
Yeah, I'll pass you the microphone.
And then we have to wrap up after this question.
Just generally speaking on trying to exit the business, if you were to do that, would you potentially go into another business, or would you think you'd even sell part of the business as opposed to completely give it up?
It would depend on the offer. No, I think if I do sell exit, I would sell the whole of Short Story because I think it would be too difficult for me to take a back step in my own business and sort of have to compromise on how I see the vision of Short Story. So I'd rather let go of it. Whether I would reinvest in another business, definitely. I think once you catch the business bug, it's very difficult to not keep pursuing different businesses. Startups is what I love, and it's actually business that I love. It just so happens that I'm doing meaningful gifts right now.
All right. Can everyone please join me in thanking Carolyn from Short Story?